I'm very happy that you invited me to explain it shortly the IHEN project. IHEN stands for the International Human Exposome Network, and this is a coordination and support action. So it's not a research project. IHEN is a coordination and support action funded by Horizon Europe. So this is not a research project. It's also not a very large project or not a very long project. It's a 3-year project, and we started in January. And coordination support actions are really there to fund networking and coordination rather than research. So IHEN is, this is the IHEN consortium. We include many partners from different EHEN projects. And the project is led by myself at ISGlobal and Roel Vermeulen at the University of Utrecht. But then we also include partners from from HEAP and from several other of the EHEN projects. As well as some other organizations that were essential to the type of network we want to build. I will start with a very brief introduction. Why do we need a network or a network project? I guess, as you are all aware, the term exposome has been around. Well, we're coming up to 20 years now, since 2005. So that's quite a long period. And in that time, especially in recent years, a lot has happened in terms of the exposome. On this graph, we just plotted the number of mentions in PubMed if you type in exposome, and you see that there's an exponential increase. Still, this is only in a few hundred per year. If you do the same for genome, you will get thousands and thousands of references. So we're not quite there yet compared to the genome. But what has happened in this space is quite impressive. We see that in the beginning there was little uptake of the exposome term and concept until Steve Rappaport published an editorial, and more people started to use the word. And then in 2011, the EU brought out a first exposome call, and several projects were funded. These were the first exposome projects, including Helix and Exposomics, and then a year later, HEALS was also funded under a similar call. So in Europe, we really had some first work trying to put this concept into practice. And then in the years following that, several initiatives started also in the US. Now, obviously, I haven't put everything in this graph here, but and you can see that in the US, the NHS has invested in the exposure assessment resources, and also in several exposome research centers. And then, of course, the EU put out a second exposome call for proposals, and funded the 9 projects in EHEN, starting in 2020. So these are the projects that are now coming to an end, including HEAP and 8 other big projects. At the same time, and I think you've also heard about IRENE in the last few days, so the IRENE infrastructure preparation projects also started. So altogether, this means that there's been really in recent years a proliferation of exposome research programs and projects, and scientific results also. So all of this has led to quite a significant increase in research output, and it's led to the establishment of new initiatives and infrastructures worldwide, not just in Europe. Mainly in Europe and the US, but there are initiatives and centers starting in other parts of the world as well. We can mention Japan or Canada and other places. But at the same time, cooperation and collaboration between the initiatives at the European level and globally remains sporadic. There is no big global initiative. And the EU basically decided that with this status, there was really a need for coordination action to bring the different players together and to build a network. So that's what we were charged with in IHEN. And we set ourselves the following goals and objectives. Our overall aim was to build a worldwide network to improve global research and cooperation on exposome research. And that network would bring together a wide variety of international stakeholders to enhance the impact of the future studies into the human exposome. And our objectives are really centered around three main topics, I would say. The first one is to design this network that engages a wide variety of stakeholders. So what we really want to end up with in 3 years' time is a blueprint for a future network that will be there for the longer term and really with some options for sustainability as well of such a network. The second objective is to provide an access point to tools and resources on the exposome so that people can go to one place to find different tools and resources. I'll come back to that point in a minute because I think that's important also with respect to the previous talk. And then the third part is that we have one work package that will look at demonstrator projects that will try to do some small studies to test the tools and resources of the second objective. Then another important part is to develop a roadmap for future exposome research. So this is really a roadmap for short, medium, and long-term research with a European focus, but also in alignment with other global efforts. And then a fifth important part is to communicate and disseminate the IHEN project results. IAC has a big role in this. We don't have our website up and running yet, otherwise I would have put it on this slide, but we hope to have this in the next few weeks so that you'll be able to find all this information. So one important point is that we build very much on the EHEN legacy, so EHEN being the European Human Exposome Network. So we take EHEN as a starting point. As we know, EHEN contains the 9 projects with quite different coverage of different parts of the exposome, also different life stages that are covered in the different projects. And all these projects are providing tools to the EHEN toolbox. So for us, all of this is a starting point, and we have to try and integrate that into a longer term international platform that will hopefully be there for the longer term. So as I said, our first objective is to design this International Human Exposome Network. We're only 6 months in, so we haven't really we don't really have the full picture yet, but what we really want to do is bring together a wide variety of global stakeholders. And this would be, first of all, exposome researchers. So anyone interested in exposome research who wants to collaborate and cooperate across the world would be welcome to join as a member of IHEN. And then we also want to involve and reach out to international organizations, scientific societies, governmental bodies, funding agencies, and other stakeholders that we need to give the highest impact as possible to IHEN and also to the activities of IHEN. So we need input, for example, in our research roadmap, we will need input from many different stakeholders, not just the researchers. We have established an international board, which contains different regional players from different regions of the world, and also especially an active group of exposome researchers in Europe, including the PIs of all the EHEN projects. And we are very slowly building up this network. This means that soon, when we have the website, we will be able to start reaching out to these different groups of stakeholders, ask them or invite them to become members. And this membership would mean, for the moment, that they would be invited to attend the open meetings at least once per year. They will be invited to participate in surveys related to the IHEN objectives. And that means the research roadmap, the tools, the inventory of the tools, possibly some training courses or an inventory of training courses. I think that's what we promised. And other resources, so that we can really bring this together and start to create IHEN as an access portal for information on the exposome worldwide. These members would also receive newsletters and periodic updates to which they can sign up through the website. Obviously, we hope that users of the resources will join the network, so they can help us also to improve those resources. And then at some point, there may be specific working groups on specific topics. So the members would also be invited to participate in those. So that's the network. The second objective is to identify and make available tools and resources at a global scale. And this means, or at least what we've promised, is that we would integrate the tools of the EHEN projects and beyond, including a fair toolbox containing the tools that support exposome research. And we still have to define exactly what would go in there, but they could, for example, include inventories of available environmental sensors and wearables, apps, omic techniques, and statistical analysis pipelines really directed at exposome research. We also promised to set up two fair data points. One is the metadata catalog that we already have a metadata working group in EHEN. This is led by the Mulgenis platform from the University in Groningen. Several EHEN projects have already been cataloging their cohort data using the Mulgenis software. So this is something that needs to be further worked out. But the idea is to have that as an access point for cohort and exposome data. And the second part is a resource for geospatial data called exposome maps. And this is an activity that's currently has been developed by the EXPANS project, which includes urban exposure maps for the whole of Europe, which will be available, openly available for anyone to use. Again, I don't have the exact details yet, but this would be part of our toolbox. And it would mean that any database or cohort, for example, could go to the exposome maps and, for example, link the geocodes of their study participants to air pollution maps or to noise maps or to green space maps. And so that could be a very important resource for the external exposome. Then, as I said, the third part is to have demonstrator projects that would test whether these tools and resources are fit for purpose. So we will implement a few small pre-specified studies to test the functionality of the tools and metadata catalog. And then we have attached to that a fellowship program and hackathons, again aimed at and actually going through these tools in the toolbox and seeing how usable and how fit for purpose these are. And we hope to learn a lot from these type of demonstrator projects. Fourth part is the development of the roadmap for future research. So here we are asked to develop the future research agenda with a European focus, but also aligned with all the different global initiatives. So the first part of that is to have a clear definition, or at least an operational definition of the exposome, so that we know what we in IHEN mean by the exposome, with some narrative on the concept. And then we're working now on an interim roadmap, which is really sort of a short to medium term research agenda, looking at where we are after EHEN, where the gaps are once EHEN finishes. So it's also important for all of us to have an input into that, so that we can really specify, okay, these projects are coming to an end. There are important pieces that have been built, including data infrastructures and other tools, and which of those need to be taken forward or need maintaining in order to not lose them. So that would be the short term. And then we will also be looking at the more distant research, at the more distant research agenda. So this will include mapping the knowledge gaps, having surveys on the needs of the stakeholders, and then preparing a final road. So just to show you a little bit more in a little bit more concretely what the work in progress on the definition of the exposome. Of course, we already have a definition, and the Chris Wilde definition is the one that we're all very familiar with. There was still thought to be a need to make sure that everyone understands the same or the similar thing when they talk about an exposome study. So this is work in progress. I don't really want to go into a long discussion on the definitions today, but I did want to show you a little bit more concretely what we are working on currently in IHEN. This was discussed in detail with our active members who were also at the IHEN kickoff meeting. I'm not going to read it all out to you now, but there are some definitions now that really try to show the exposome as an integrated, combined compilation of physical, chemical, biological, and psychosocial factors that have an impact on biology and health. And an operational study, an operational definition would be the field that studies this compilation of effects by integrating data from a variety of interdisciplinary methodologies and streams to enable discovery-based analysis on environmental influences on health. So here we're trying to set aside we're trying to set apart a little bit the exposome field from the traditional environment and health research, in that the exposome should work towards a more discovery-based analysis of these influences. Again, this is still work in progress. At some point, this will be put as a document on the website, and what we are discussing now is to have this posted and open for input from anyone who wants to provide input on that. And then I want to emphasize that we are really about collaboration. So this is, obviously there are partners in the project who will do the actual work, but we really want to collaborate with as many interested parties as possible. So first of all, as I said already, IHEN builds on EHEN, and all the projects are involved, either as partners or in the international board of IHEN. We also collaborate closely with the IRENE research infrastructure. So Jana Klanova is one of our partners, and we are really working together so that we see the two as complementary to each other, whereby IHEN is developing a vision for the future exposome research, and the associated investment and organizational needs in alignment with global stakeholders. And IRENE is developing, harmonizing, and coordinating the physical EU research infrastructures, like the laboratory capacity, the biobanks, and data infrastructures needed to deliver on the IHEN vision. So in that way, the two of them would really be complementary. Then we will also collaborate closely with similar coordination efforts in the US. So in the US, there's also an initiative to set up a coordination center in exposome research. We're still waiting to hear the outcome of that call. It's funded by NHS and other NIH institutes. So as soon as we know who will lead that effort, we will also set up strong links with the US. And then we have an international board to represent all global regions. And this is also a really important part of being an international network, is that we want to see what is needed in the different global regions. So in Asia and Africa, in South America, and to see how we can foster these global interactions, and the needs in the different parts of the world will be very different. But we really hope that by setting up maybe regional hubs, or by really talking to the regional interested parties, we get a better idea of the needs in other parts of the world. So that's our international and global outreach. And that's all I have to say today about IHEN. This is a photo from our kickoff. So I want to thank all the partners in the project and the collaborators who came to that meeting, because we had some very, very good and very interesting brainstorming discussions there to get the project started.